Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Seasons Ebb and Flow. I'm Lee Wright, a divorce coach, and today I am excited to be interviewing Elise Sally. She is a licensed and board certified behavior analyst. Just wanted to make sure I got that right.
Yep.
And uh, I'm really excited. We're going to be talking a little bit about she is a guardian ad litem. She can be a parenting coordinator as well as she does mediation. So there's a lot of information. I have never interviewed anybody who does guardian ad litem work or parenting coordination. So I think there's a lot of great information that we can learn and share for those of you who are having some issues with co-parenting or getting to a completed parenting plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Elise and just tell us a little bit about herself, how she got to where she is and what she's doing. So go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So, my educational passion started really young for psychology. That started in seventh grade. I knew I wanted to do something to be able to test individuals and to see what their scores were and look at the data. And
Hmm.
so I went straight into a bachelor's in psychology and did a minor in statistics to be able to have the data component of it.
Hmm.
And then when I finished, I did a couple other masters partially that I didn't like. And I worked for a little bit, a couple years as a psychosocial rehabilitation specialist, kind of helping people who were struggling and more of like a coaching role and trying to help them get better in specific areas of their lives. And
Okay.
that's when I learned about behavior analysis when I worked for that, or I was a contractor for that company. And I went back and got a master's in that and loved it and got board certified.
Nice.
And I did that for a long time. So I had behavior. I can't even remember the name of my company now.
Hmm.
That's terrible, but
I,
I
well,
have
I guess that means that you've
it's
totally
not
let
here right
that
now.
go and moved
Right.
on.
I've totally moved on from that now. Behavioral consulting and beyond. I had that for 6 or 7 years or so. And I did in-home work for 8 years. So as total, I've been doing this for 10 years. And what
Okay.
started the whole legal journey for me is representing myself in a paternity case that's been highly litigious and highly contentious.
Hmm.
When I talked to some attorneys about it, they said they've never seen anything like it before, like with how many docket items there are. And so I've been thrown into this pit, and it's either one of those die or survive type things. And so I
Yeah.
had to swim to the top and learn all about law really quickly to be
Hmm.
able to successfully represent myself because the courts are not set up for pro se individuals to succeed. So
Wow.
not only have I had to do this for myself, I now have a world of empathy for everyone who's going through family law, and especially if they're in litigation, because it's not the best system the way we currently have it set up. And I think there are a lot of supports that are missing that can be
Hmm.
filled in.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
so, did you decide to represent yourself for like you tried working with a lawyer, or what made you decide to go that route?
Yeah, I did try for a little bit because the other side, the other parent, is so contentious and a high conflict personality and also has unlimited funds. They were able to out lawyer me within a matter of months. My fees were in the 10,000s, which is unsustainable for most of us. And
Yeah.
so that's not something I could do. So my only option was to represent myself.
Wow. Okay. Well, good for you for taking a stand and not letting them just run all over you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I imagine that's so difficult, but kudos.
Mhm.
All right, so getting right into it, let's start with the guardian ad litem work. For people who don't quite know what that is, can you kind of give us a little overview of what a guardian ad litem does and what is the
Mhm.
process? What does that look like? Who appoints a guardian ad litem, and then what are the steps that a guardian ad litem would take? And then at the end, what is
Right.
their output?
Yes, absolutely. So a guardian ad litem is going to be a third party who is put onto a pre-existing domestic relations case. And not always domestic relations. So I have a couple cases that are in guardianship with adult dependents, but typically we
Uh,
see them in domestic relations when there are children involved.
yeah.
So it's either going to be a divorce case or a paternity action.
Mm,
And we come into play when there are allegations of abuse or neglect, or say parents just aren't co-parenting effectively if they're very contentious, or
mm,
if we have parents that are in separate states or separate countries from one another. That's another reason why we'd be appointed. And the process of getting that done is whether you're pro se or you have an attorney, you have to file a motion to appoint a guardian ad litem. You can't just say, I want this service, I'm going to pay for this service, I'm going to get it. It's something that actually has to come from the judge. So once a person is appointed, we would send our standard order to the judge, and it says all these things about what we're allowed to do, all this information that we're allowed to pull, and that we're able to see the child wherever they are, regardless of how the parents feel about this service. They are ordered to allow it and to pay for it.
mm.
So it's
And
not a
participate,
service.
like they
Right.
actually have to engage with you, answer questions, let
Yeah.
you come into their
Yeah.
home.
Yes, they do. And you can do unannounced visits if that's something that you feel is necessary. So
Mm,
it's not a role where people are happy with us.
yeah.
Most people don't want this service. And I feel like the best case scenario is where both people are slightly unhappy with me. But
Mm,
typically, it's more along the lines of someone absolutely hates what I have to say about the case. They try to get me removed. They try to attack me personally in court because you have to say that the guardian has poor character or is biased in some way in order to have them
um,
removed. That's just the legal process of it. So I
right.
understand. I don't take it personally as best as I can.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's typically how it goes down is one side is very unhappy and then they try to stop the service. And then in order to do that, because it's court appointed, we have to go about it in a very court way.
Right. So there's a very
Mhm.
structured process. And then,
Yes.
so at the end, you complete like a report that you submit to the court.
We do. So we do complete reports. What we do investigations of both households, both parents, wherever the child or the adult dependent is. So if they go to school, we'd go to the school and talk to everyone who knows this child. We would talk to everyone parents want us to talk to as far as character references. We're polling documents. So we're looking for DCF reports, police reports, medical, if there are any concerns with medical care, school reports if there are any concerns with behaviors that are happening in the school. And then we compile everything and put it into a report with our recommendations of what's in the child's best interest. And
Mm,
we present that to the judge. So a lot of times there will either be a hearing for the guardian ad litem to present the report, or it will just occur at trial. So we will be put on the stand and we'll have to answer questions about the report.
okay.
Mhm.
So, and what is the difference between a guardian ad litem and a parenting coordinator?
A guardian ad litem has all of those abilities to be able to get all of that information without parents' consent.
Okay.
Parents, so that's mainly for the children or the adult dependents. A
Okay.
parenting coordinator is going to be for the parents. So
Mm,
that's not going to be as in depth. It's not as invasive as a guardian ad litem is, where you're
okay.
meeting with the parents almost always virtually,
Okay.
separately and or together if you're getting to a point where that's appropriate, and
Right.
helping them with effective communication, seeing what their issues are with co-parenting,
Hmm.
seeing if they have any issues with the parenting plan so
Okay.
they can make minor changes to parenting plans. If they don't have a parenting plan, they can develop one with a parenting coordinator, but that's very rare. It's
Yeah.
usually gonna be that they have one in place already, but they can't make major changes to a parenting plan with a parenting coordinator. If they need to do any major changes, they'll have to either do mediation or relitigate it.
Okay.
And parenting coordinators can stay on cases for up to 2 years. And it
Mm,
seems like oftentimes they're appointed toward the end, so at trial. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like a wraparound service to prevent them from relitigating after their trial
Okay.
has ended. Because think about when people are in court, they're in a court mindset, they're in an adversarial mindset. So
Yes.
once your trial happens and you're done, what do you
Mhm.
do with all of that mental energy
Yeah.
you've
How do
been
you now
using on?
convert to actually co-parenting
Right,
and
exactly.
respecting each other and recognizing that phase of this
Mm-hmm.
process and relationship is over, and we now need to try and be
Right.
respectful and work with each other and rearrange the schedule for a weekend if need be for a vacation or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
And the court
Yes,
doesn't want them coming back in for little things like that. So the
exactly.
court then, if they are struggling, people can hire a parenting coordinator on their own, or it's generally usually appointed to them from the court because they're going back into court and the court's like, mm-mm, this is not what we want to be dealing with.
To be an official parenting coordinator, you would be appointed by the court. So
Okay.
that would happen at some point during your case.
Okay.
If you wanted one afterwards, you would have to relitigate it and do a motion requesting similar to a guardian ad litem, and then the judge
Okay.
would have to sign off on that.
Okay.
If you were to wanted to do something private pay, it would be something different. So that's sort of like what we offer in care coordination. It just
Mm.
doesn't have as many powers as the court appointed ones do.
Sure. So the court, if they can tell that the couple is so contentious during the litigation, the judge might say, I'm going to assign a parent coordinator
Hmm.
and put that in there. And if they can co-parent on their own, great. But if they're struggling, they need to use this resource. So it's almost like a preemptive,
Yes,
anticipatory.
right,
Okay.
right. Yep. So judges can just choose that on their own without parents having to present the motion.
Okay.
Mhm.
And for the most part, when you for the guardian ad litem work and the report, the judges pretty much follow your recommendations. Is that what people can anticipate?
It depends on the judge.
Okay.
Um, I logically think that if a judge appreciates a guardian ad litem enough to appoint them, then
Hmm.
they would probably put some weight into their report. I would think logically, if a judge doesn't care about a guardian ad litem's report, then they're less likely to appoint them in the first place.
Yeah, that
But
makes
that's just my logic.
right.
It's up to every situation, every case, every judge.
Okay. And a guardian ad litem can be involved even if the parents live in different states.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So depending on what the request is, they're also different. What the request of the parents are. So say we have a parent who lives in another state and they're okay with having, let's say, every other weekend and holiday time sharing, and the parent in Florida is also okay with it, then there would be really not so much of a need for me to do a home visit to the other state
Mm,
because the parent here doesn't have any allegations of the other parent's home being unsafe.
gotcha.
If there are allegations of that, then yes, I need to fly there to
Mhm.
see that whole journey and what it's going to be like and what is their home like and
Yeah.
what, are these allegations plausible,
Mhm.
credible?
Right.
So it just depends on the situation. Sometimes we will just do virtual home visits if there aren't any serious allegations of a parent in another state or another country. Can happen too.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So now we're going to pivot to the whole other area that you focus on, which is mediation. And can you tell us a little bit about, for people who don't know very much about mediation, what is the difference between pro se mediation and mediating with attorneys?
Pro se anything just means that you're there without an attorney.
Okay.
And you're absolutely able to do that. I made a video on that the other day because it's a big misconception that I see a lot is people saying you have to have an attorney for mediation. No, you absolutely do not. You
Mm-mm.
also don't have to have an attorney for court. I mean, could you imagine if you were required to do that? So many people wouldn't be able to pay for it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's pro se. You do it on your own. If you're representing, then you are having an attorney with you. And
Mhm.
mediation is a very flexible, fluid process. So a couple can choose to have one attorney between them. Maybe they just talk to the attorney an hour before the mediation. Maybe they want the attorney there with them at the mediation. Maybe they want 5 attorneys. I have one family that has 5 attorneys right now.
In
And so
mediation.
they did bring 5 to mediation. Yes, they did.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow. That's an interesting
Yes.
setup.
So
Okay.
mediation is the client's process.
Yes.
Whether they want to be represented during it or not is entirely up to them.
Right. Yeah, I always recommend to my clients, like, if you can try and mediate with a good mediator without attorneys there initially,
Mhm.
even just see how far you can get.
Mhm.
And then potentially, if you hit stalemates and you cannot move forward, then maybe start to consider incorporating attorneys. But a lot of times you can get through a lot
Mhm.
mediation without attorneys, and you can then use attorneys to review the settlement and make sure
Right.
that they don't think that you've missed anything.
Mhm.
But if both parents are rational, that
Mhm.
sometimes you have one parent who is just, either has some mental health issues or just cannot, has anger management issues, and the one parent knows, like, I know we're not going to be able to do
Mhm.
this on our own, and then they need to hire professionals. But if you're both rational, respectful people and you're working with a good mediator, uh,
Mhm.
most people can can get to a solid settlement without involving attorneys. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people even realize that at this point.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with everything you just said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and when you do have attorneys involved, do like for you, do attorneys choose you as the mediator? Like sometimes the attorneys decide together, like, oh, we
Mhm.
like working, we both have worked with Elise in the past, it's worked for us, so
Right.
we recommend her to our clients.
Right. Yeah, it's either gonna be one is recommending or both no and are recommending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that when you are starting to work with clients as a mediator, what are some things that you encourage them or remind them to keep in mind while they are participating in the mediation process?
That it's all about respect. So even prior to them starting mediation, I send out a handout of I statements, and I
Mm,
ask people to try and remember to speak from an I point of view. So I feel like such and such
mm,
rather than you did or you make me, because then that insinuates blame. And
yeah,
anytime that happens, then people have the reaction to protect themselves first and then to attack. So
yes,
I try to downplay that as much as possible. I let people know that if it's getting to a point where it's an ineffective environment, that I'm gonna either mute them or caucus them, which just means to split them up, or
hmm,
we'll all go on a break so they can regroup.
yes,
So I try to keep it very informal and very calm. So we're using first names to everybody,
yeah,
unless people really want otherwise.
hmm,
And I also try to do joint mediation for as long as possible, unless someone has asked me up front, can we be immediately caucused? Or unless there is a strong history or ongoing interpersonal violence,
mm,
then that's gonna need to be something where they're caucused. But typically, most people, if they can get through that opening statement together, then
hmm,
I'll let them know, "Do you wanna try to go to move forward a little bit in a joint session?" And a
right,
lot of people are open to that.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's definitely dependent on each case and each situation and the
Right.
dynamic between the parties for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, and I would imagine some people are kind of on the same page when it comes to custody and parenting, but then once you start talking money, sometimes that's where the
Yep.
challenges can really arise.
Yep. I've noticed that too.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, custody battles are awful, but it's amazing how emotional the conversations get when it comes to money and financial settlements as
Right.
well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Let me go on my soapbox for a minute and tell you and our audience that it's not called custody anymore. It's called time sharing, which
Okay.
is,
Yes.
how we sometimes try to change language as we go along as a society
Yes.
to make it more positive. We're
Mm-hmm.
sharing our time with our child. We're sharing our child's time with our parents,
Right.
rather than you're in custody with me.
Right. Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Of course. I mean, I know it's something I do meetings with SEO people pretty often, and they're saying like, your site's not getting hits for custody. And I'm like, yeah, because it's not called custody. So
Right. Right.
my little give is I say, okay, well, I'll put in parentheses formerly known as custody. Uh,
Mm,
So yeah, it's a battle that probably only I fight. And another one too is now it's supposed to be in domestic relations cases with an and or an ampersand between the names and
mm,
not a V for verses.
ah,
So that's another big one that I see. If I see
yeah.
attorneys are still using the V, it's either
Mm-hmm.
because they're very set in their ways or they're more adversarial.
Right.
You're not
Right.
supposed to be fighting your co-parent or
Yes.
your ex. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that the whole movement is going more towards trying to create a collaborative process.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, that is definitely what I advocate. That's what I have with my ex. We are
Hmm.
very amicable. It was tense during the divorce, there's no doubt about it, but that was
Yep.
like a short period of time. And um, I definitely speak about choosing your battles because uh, this is about focusing on what's best for the kids and you creating your own new separate lives and letting
Right.
go of the past and the baggage from the past because now you are not sharing your lives anymore, you're sharing your children.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, yeah, helping people let go and move forward is really important.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah. So, if people are trying to decide whether to start the process with hiring attorneys or going at it initially alone, what types of things would you recommend that they think about, or how would they go about starting out on their own if they want to take that process and see where it goes?
That's a really good, huge question, and my large answers
Mhm.
are that we need more education about these processes. And
Yes.
that's a big thing that I try to do is just provide tidbits of education that they're not promotional. I just want people knowing what options exist.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
if you go the route of filing your divorce papers or your paternity papers, and maybe you're suited up with an attorney, maybe you're not, but still your ex, your co-parent is going to be served from a sheriff knocking on their door, and they're going to get very scary papers that say you have been sued. You
Yeah.
need to find an attorney. And it's interesting to me that some of them say that because it's incorrect. You
Mhm.
do not need is the word there. You do not need to find an attorney. There
Mm,
are other ways that you can go about this.
mhm.
So I have a lot of thoughts on that. I always think very preventively. And I think that we need to start addressing some of these things in our children now. And
Mhm.
I also, as far as effective communication and coping skills and things
Mhm.
of that nature, conflict resolution, I also believe that we need to start addressing people prior to having children, prior to getting married. Not only do they need to take that marital course or that parenting course or whatever it is they take, I
Yeah,
really think we should be showing people what court looks like.
yeah.
How is it going to feel? Watch some videos of people in trial. This is how you have to act. This is what it's going to look like. If you're there by yourself, you're not going to know what to do. This
Mm-hmm.
is how long it's going to take. Here are some sample motions. People are calling each other monsters and saying they're alcoholics and they're abusive, and they're coming up with every single thing they can think of,
Yes.
whether it's true or not. And that is
Mhm.
now public record.
Right.
This is what people need to know before they make these huge decisions to have children and to get married.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a lot that I think, can be addressing preventively that we're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think education is so important. And that's the beauty of interviews like this on YouTube, on Spotify with podcasts. I think people getting informed before they dive
Mhm.
into any situation. And I do think that many people have no idea that like 90% of divorces are completed in mediation. There's just a very
Right,
small
right.
percentage who go to
Yep,
court. So this
right.
idea that you automatically if you're getting divorced are going to go to court is
Mhm.
not at all the reality. And if
Right.
people understood that from the get-go, then their mindset of how they will start the process and move forward and the type of attorney they choose and hire, if
Mhm.
they decide they need to incorporate attorneys, would be very different. And we
Right.
both, just to share with the listeners, we met each other in the Central Florida Collaborative Group, which is all about the collaborative divorce process, which is a very different way of going through divorce. It does incorporate attorneys, but the goal is to never end up in court. And there
Mhm.
is a financial neutral and a mental health neutral. So those people are there to help people get through the parenting plan and the financial splitting of assets with a mediator essentially, and then the attorneys are there just to kind of help move the process along and do the writing up of the documents. And so of course the attorneys are very knowledgeable, but they're not there to litigate and try and
Mhm.
create a
Mhm.
war and make a ton of money by making it go on for years and years.
Right. So
So
those positions will be there if they're necessary, like having attorneys and taking it to court and being very adversarial about it. That's still going to be there, but I want people to know that there are healthier ways and they're less expensive. I mean,
yeah, very, totally like night and day.
right. Right. So even us, like our company, we always try to do mediation first. But sometimes, a lot of times, I'd say in calls we've gotten recently, one person is saying, well, they don't know about the divorce yet. They don't know that I want a divorce. I'll try to tell them, or they won't agree to mediation. So, of course, we'll try to reach out and call that person and talk to them about it. If that's not successful, we then can tell them, well, we can prepare your divorce documents and file them for you.
Hmm.
So we still have that for them to fall back on if these processes aren't successful.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And another thing that I learned, just coming back to what you spoke about with being served by a sheriff,
Mhm.
um, I didn't know because I was served by a sheriff, and it's
Mhm.
very unsettling, and I
Yeah.
didn't know it was going to happen. None of that. So it is kind of interesting that like my divorce ended up being amicable, but like
Mhm.
it was not the way I anticipated we would start.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but
Yep.
that's water under the bridge
Yep.
at this point. Um, but I have then since learned that you do not have to be served if the party who's filing for the divorce, they can say, I'm I want this person to be notified, or I'm going to give them the paperwork, or they don't have to be served by a sheriff if both parties are on the same page that we are
Mm-hmm.
starting the
Mm-hmm.
divorce. And I think that that's another piece of information, because I think the way you start the process is really important. It kind of
Right.
sets the tone for
Yep.
how we want to go through this. So I was shocked when I got
Yes.
served without any notice, because we had
Right.
been amicable, we'd been separated, we'd been working together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we were doing things with the kids together, and all of a sudden this came out of nowhere. So
Right.
um and then all of a sudden it put me on the defensive, and I went and found a
Mm-hmm.
really strong attorney, and
Yep.
it started to become this yeah, not the way I anticipated, and things
Yeah.
ended up working out. But yeah, I think it's really important to just be aware of your actions and your choices from the
Mm-hmm.
get-go when you start to
Yes.
begin set
Yeah.
the stage for the way you want it to go.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I think some people just fall into that. I think most people fall into that and have no idea that
mhm.
when they file their divorce papers, their former spouse is getting served with a sheriff.
Right, right. Yeah,
So,
and if
and then of
lawyers
course,
made it more
you put up your
clear
shield.
to
Yeah.
that let you know there are other options. And I think
Right.
that's the thing. People who are lawyers who are part of the collaborative process or encourage that, they're going to encourage a process that is much more
Mm-hmm. Yep.
not antagonistic.
Right. And this is also why I talk about teaching as children effective communication and conflict resolution.
Yes.
Because if we're to that point where we're adversarial, it's because one or both people has a skill deficit somewhere along those lines.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately, like I think about that with my kids. We focus so much on like algebra and
Right.
calculus when they're in high school, but the social, emotional, soft skills that are
Mhm.
really what are going to make them successful in life, and their
Yeah. Yeah.
relationships successful, not just love relationships, but all relationships. Those are the skills that we should be really, there should be classes on that as well. But
Yes.
that is just, I, yeah, I don't understand why that is not a bigger focus in our entire education system. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yes.
So, all right, great. If you can tell us just a little bit about where people can find you on social media and what your website is, I'll put that all in the notes as well and the description on YouTube. But if you want to share a little bit about where people can find you.
Yes, absolutely. Our company is Serenity Family Solutions, and our website now is like the new hip. It's serenityfam.com.
Nice.
And then I think all of our social media, I think Facebook is Serenity Family Solutions, Instagram I think is Serenity Fam. And then I honestly don't remember what Twitter is, but I think those are the big ones that we use, and we
Yeah,
can be reached at 407-377-7147. So
okay,
I chose that number because there are so many sevens in it.
nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time and sharing all this information. And I guess I will be seeing you at one of our next meetings. But
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for you taking the time to do this today.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely.